New levels, new spells, a new stage in the masked carnival, and of course, new weapons tied to it. However, unlike Go-Go, who was a test of speed, Goldor is a test of execution, meaning you can take as long as you want, you just need to complete a few challenges while doing so. Those being a walk in the park, meaning you can't use your sprint, elemental mastery, meaning you need to use a spell of every element type, and finally, don't break the crystal in Act 2. If you manage to complete all 3 of these objectives, then once you complete the stage, you'll be able to obtain a fancy new umbrella. With that being said, let's go over how to actually accomplish this feat. As with any piece of Blue Mage content, the first thing we need to do is pick our spells, and like always, the first spell you're going to want is Etheric Mimicry, specifically Healing Mimicry, as it will provide us with some extra survivability. After Mimicry, we need to pick the spells that are actually required for the stage, which are Flying Sardine, Loom, Ram's Voice, Ultra Vibration, Diamondback, and Exuviation. With the required spells taken care of, we can now move on to our challenge spells, because remember, we need a spell of each elemental type. We already have Ice covered with Rams, but that still leaves 5 more to cover. My personal recommendations are Fire Angon for fire, Feather Rain for wind, Mountain Buster for earth, Tingle for lightning, and Sea Shanty for water. And those are all the spells that we need to actually get the achievement, but we still have slots to fill. You'll basically always want to bring the buffing trio, Triple Trident, and Breath of Magic. I personally like to bring Palm Cure as a more potent heal than Exuviation, but it's by no means necessary. The remaining slots you'll want to fill with damage, ideally with things like J-Kick or Phantom Flurry, as the more physical attacks you have, the faster Act 2 will go. Before we start, you should know that the boss doesn't do much damage in the beginning, meaning you're free to use Moonfloat with little to no risk. That being said, Goldor is going to start the fight by using Blizzard 3, which is an attack you'll need to interrupt with the Flying Sardine. If you're in Moonfloat, this will normally happen about halfway through it. After Blizzard, he will follow up with Fire 3, which is a chasing AoE. Just keep moving and you should dodge not only the fire, but also Blast, which is a line AoE that the boss will aim at the player's current position. A few moments later, the boss is going to spawn a slime that, if not dealt with, will explode, killing you. Thankfully, all we need to do is freeze them with Rams and then use Ultra Vibration. However, be careful, as the boss is also going to start casting Quake, which is a cascading AoE. Normally, you'll have enough time to freeze the slime, but afterwards you'll want to dodge, then use Vibration. The next attack you'll have to deal with is Fire, which, unlike Fire 3, will spawn several balls of fire that will explode shortly. In order to survive, you're going to have to kill at least one of these balls of fire to create a small safe zone near the edge of the arena. However, be careful, as Goldor is not only going to use a blast during this phase, but he'll also use a knockback, so make sure you're positioned so you get knocked into the safe spot. Now, when it comes to killing the balls, refreshing your Breath of Magic should not only hit the boss, but also the balls, which will handle most of the damage. However, I recommend having another DPS cooldown like Feather Rain or Phantom Flurry to help ensure they die. Once you make it through fire, then you have to deal with Gravity, which will inflict you with a slow that effectively prevents you from moving. The boss will then use Blast, which you'll need to use Loom to dodge. Do this one more time for a second blast, and you're done with Gravity. A few moments later, Goldor is going to start casting their last new spell, Thunder 3. Once he finishes this cast, you'll be inflicted with a potent dot that you'll want to use Exuviation to remove. And while this is happening, the arena is going to be covered with random AoEs, along with yet another blast. Afterwards, he's going to cast Blizzard 3, which again, you just need to interrupt. And then, we move on to another fire phase. However, this one has an added twist, as he'll also cast Thunder 3, meaning you'll need to dodge the Thunder and Blast, cleanse the debuff, all while killing the balls to make a safe spot. And like earlier, I would recommend having some extra DPS spells to make sure you actually kill the balls. Once you finish the second fire phase, you'll have another Gravity, but by this point, Goldor should be dead or close to dying, which means we can move on to Act 2. Much like Act 1, Goldor doesn't do much starting off, meaning you're safe to start with Moonfloat. He'll begin by summoning 4 golems that are going to cover the area in line AoEs, which you'll need to position yourself to dodge, as he's also going to use a knockback. Now, the area that you want to get knocked back towards is the left or right of any of the golems, and don't worry, you should have enough time to adjust before the line AoEs go off. After the golems, Goldor is then going to summon 4 dolls, and they're going to completely cover the arena in undodgeable AoEs. The boss is also going to start casting a Quake. To survive this, you're going to want to position yourself directly in between 2 of the dolls, and get as close to the Quake AoE as you can. Once you see the animation for the Quake, you want to take a single step forward and immediately cast Diamondback. Afterwards, you're going to want to heal up, as this will usually hit you for half your health. And once the dolls are done, you have one more summon, this time a Cyclops. Right after he summons the Cyclops, Goldor is going to begin casting Thunder 3, which works like it did in Act 1, so just make sure to remove the debuff and dodge the AoEs. As for the Cyclops, he is by far the simplest of the summons, as all you need to do is when he pulls you to the center, just walk to the edge. And now that we've been shown how these 3 summons work, the act is going to start for real, as the next thing Goldor does is use Gold Fever, which is going to summon his crystal that will greatly increase his magic damage, along with making him immune to magic. Which means from this point on, you're going to be relying on physical attacks to do damage. You also want to be careful to avoid destroying the crystal, as while doing so will make him weaker, it will also mean you fail the achievement. Now the first thing that the buff Goldor is going to do is another Shining Summoning, but this time we'll have to deal with all 3 at the same time, which funnily enough is kind of easier than them individually. Once they all appear, you want to find the doll, and then wait for the Cyclops to do his suck attack. Afterwards, all you need to do is go in between the doll and the golem, making sure to dodge the golem lines when they appear. Keep in mind, just before this happens, Goldor will use a blast that you can preemptively bait. After the summons, you'll have to deal with a gravity, which is exactly the same as Act 1, which can also be said for the blizzard that follows it, as all you need to do is interrupt it. But this is just the calm before the storm, as the last new attack we have in Act 2 is Goldor Rush. And this is basically just every AoE that the boss has used previously in a single attack, meaning you have to dodge random thunder, cascading quakes, chasing fire, and a couple of blasts. That, or you can just use Diamondback, which will let you survive the attack. Most of the time. You see, using Diamondback, you're basically guaranteed to take 4 hits. Now, in most cases, you'll likely take a 5th hit from one of the Thunder AoEs, which is fine. But if you're unlucky, you might get hit by 2 Thunder AoEs, which has a good chance of killing you. And this will usually happen because you get hit by the edges of one instead of dead on, because from what I have seen, the AoEs don't appear to hit the same spot twice, but can overlap with a previous spot. For this reason, I'll usually use Diamondback closer to the edge rather than the center. With that being said, you'll want to make sure to position yourself right after the blizzard. Then get ready to use your Diamondback as soon as you see the cast. Now, if you survive Rush, you've seen and done the whole fight. Now, from this point on, it's just going to repeat in the order of Summon, Gravity, Blizzard, and Rush. Generally, after a Rush, I recommend healing and then using Moonflute to get as much damage as you can, as outside of Rush, there isn't really that much damage in this fight. All that's left is to continue the loop until you get your kill and then your fancy new umbrella, which you'll still need to buy from the Blue Mage vendor. Hopefully you found this guide somewhat useful, and if you did, consider checking out one of my others at the side. Also, if you have something you'd like to see me make a guide for, let me know in the comments, as this was in part given priority because someone suggested it. But with that being said, if you're still here, thanks for watching, and I'll see you for whatever I do next.